look at one-to-many. In this particular case, we have maybe the faculty and having authored several courses, a course having many sections, or the faculty teaching multiple sections. And now in the classical implementation, in relational databases, what you would do is that the children, right, would have references back to their parents, so you would know who they belong to, right? Right. So the classical sense would be that, for instance, the section would have a foreign key called faculty ID that would have a value to the primary key of the faculty. Right. Same thing with course. Course would have maybe an attribute called author ID that would tell you who the author was, a particular faculty. Make sense? This is a classical implementation, and you could do this in Mongo just as well. Reference some other collection, some other record, some other document with their primary key, or right instead you can use kind of the same technique that we looked at earlier, where the faculty can have a knowledge about the children. Right? Instead of the children having references back to the parent, you can go the other way around. You can have the parent faculty knowing about all the sections that they're teaching. Right? You can have the faculty having sections taught, and then the IDs of the different sections that they are teaching. Right? Or same thing with courses that they author, and all the arrays of the various courses that they are authoring. Okay. And so again, we have an array of collections of IDs. Or even better, right? Even better, you can have that the section taught is not references at all. They're not referencing any documents that lives elsewhere. The document actually lives in there, in the array itself. Okay? So instead of having the value of some ID that lives somewhere else, right? The JSON object is actually embedded inside of the array itself. Okay, so we refer to this as the embedded model, right? Where we have objects embedded in other objects, right? And you store them in the database, in an embedded format. Actually, this is the preferred way Mongo prefers to store objects. Whereas a relational database, will typically have you breaking up the data model into multiple tables with lots of foreign keys, pointing to each other. Mongo prefers you to actually have big objects that contain other objects, as much as possible, that you would retrieve the data in one single swoop, right, without any need of joining anything, and you get the whole object all by itself, and then send it back for consumption by whatever client needs the data, right, without any processing, any grouping, any joining, whatever, right? But this representation here comes with a caveat, right? Where sometimes it might make sense and sometimes it doesn't. In this particular case, it doesn't make sense to embed sections inside of the faculty. Okay, the reason is that sections typically are being referenced or useful to many folks, right? The students, right? The registrar's office. Many folks are interested in manipulating sections, right? If they are instead embedded inside of a faculty, right, that's very cumbersome, right? Because I first have to manipulate the faculties and somehow then find the sections embedded in there, which makes no sense, right? Faculties should be able to exist, and sections should be able to exist, right, without them having to be embedded inside of another. Now, I should be able to manipulate sections individually, independently of their faculty that they belong to. Make sense? So depending on the use case, it might make sense to embed them. It might not make sense to embed them. Right? So for instance, there's another data model down here somewhere where you have a course. A course, in the sense that we have been working throughout the semester. Courses contain modules. Modules contains lessons. Lessons contains topics, and topics contain widgets. Thank you. Right? Now, in that case, you might ask yourself, well, what about widgets? Do widgets make sense for them to exist on their own? Probably not. Right? It might make sense that widgets can only exist within a topic, and topics can probably only exist within a lesson. Right? that you would never access it with outside of the context of a lesson, of a topic. Yes? In that sense, then it makes sense that all these objects are actually embedded inside of each other, right? The widgets embedded in the topics embedded in the lessons embedded in the modules. The modules may be embedded in the courses, but it makes no sense to embed the courses inside of a teacher, right? Because the teacher the course should be able to exist independent of the teacher. Make sense? So in some cases you would use the embedded model. In some cases you would use the references, right? That would reference each other, depending on the use cases, depending on your understanding of the relationship between the two. Make sense? Right? And notice that indeed the diamonds, right, kind of capture that sense, right? The white diamonds, right, that did not fill the empty diamonds there, means that there is an aggregation dependency here, right? That faculties can have references to courses, but courses themselves, the lifespan of the course, right, does not depend on the lifespan of the faculty, right? If they want to change the faculty who teaches this course, that's fine, right? The course doesn't have to disappear, right? Whereas the course and the module do have a life dependency, right? If I remove the course, it doesn't make sense to keep the modules around, right? If I remove the lessons, it makes no sense to keep around the topics, right? So there is a composition relationship between the two, right? If I remove the parent, all the children go with it, right? Whereas the faculty, right, there is no life cycle dependency between the two. Make sense? Right. So for one of them, for the course, module, lessons, and topic, that makes sense to be the embedded model. Whereas the faculty to course or faculty to section, right, it might make sense to do references, right, where you reference another object using its primary key. Make sense? All right. Oh, and that takes me to the to the topic embedded objects. Right. So as I was mentioning earlier, right, for the lessons and the modules and whatnot, it makes sense to have lessons embedded in modules, modules embedded in courses. That if you remove the entire course, it removes all the modules, lessons, and everything in it. Right? They're literally inside of each other. And here we have a couple of topics, and then we say lesson 1 topics is equal to the array of all the topics. The actual JSON objects, right? Not references. The actual JSON objects only exist here. Right? They don't live in anywhere else, and we're just referencing them. They live under there. Same thing for the lessons, contain the different lessons for a module, and the course has the different modules containing the array of all the modules. Okay. So for instance, in here you might insert into modules. You might insert here a name. Right, and then a lesson that contains one single lesson. So let's play around with this, right? Let's play around with this. So let's insert here a brand new module, which contains an embedded lessons array that contains a single lesson embedded object. Yes? So let's do that. All right. So if we display pretty, notice that indeed, right, we have a lessons attribute there inside of the module, and it contains a single array with a single embedded object in there. Yes? Is that a reference to something that lives elsewhere? It's right inside of this array. We can add to it. We can push onto the module 1 we just created, an additional lesson onto the lessons array. We're going to push in there another lesson called lesson 2. Let's do that. Right, and if we pre-print, notice that now we have 2 lessons in there, right, in the module, right, with lesson 1 and lesson 2. Right, and we can keep going, right? We can keep creating this hierarchy, these embedded objects. So, for instance, I can retrieve the lesson from module number 1. There it is, right? So just give me the lessons. I don't want all the other stuff. Just only give me the lessons. Let's keep going. What about from the modules inside of the lesson, I want to add a topic. Starting from the module, I want to navigate down to a particular lesson, right? And that particular lesson, I want to add inside a topic in that lesson. I can start navigating all these things. I could have broken it up and built it from the inside out. I'm trying to build it from the outside in, right? Only because I want to run into a particular problem, and then we won't have a solution, and that will be a nice segue into the next topic. So, for instance, here it says I'm going to try and update an existing module, and I want to update the record or the document whose name is module 1 and lessons.name. Now lessons is an array, right? Lessons is an array, and I'm saying lessons.name. So what that's going to do is that it's going to iterate over the array of lessons, finding which object in that array has an attribute called name that is equal to lesson 1. That's pretty cool, right? So that lessons.name colon lesson 1, that means pattern match all the lessons objects, and there's 2 in there. Right, there's 2. So pattern match, look for an object whose field is name and whose value is lesson 1. Right? Once you find it, it could be this one, or it could be that one. It's going to iterate over this array until it finds it. Right? So it's going to find this one. Okay, it's going to find that one. We don't know which one. It could be the first one, the second one, the third one, the 31st one. I don't know which one. I don't know the index. Okay. So once you find it, set. Now set is going to update whatever you did find. You want to update whatever you did find. I want to modify, starting with the array lessons, the actual index that you did find. I don't know which one. It could be the 31st one. I don't know. The one that matched here. Okay? It could have been the second one, the third. I don't know which index matched. I don't know which one matched. So $sign is a placeholder for whatever matched. I don't know which one. So in there's a topics. I want to, now note that lessons doesn't have a topics. I am adding a brand new field called topics that contains an array of an embedded object of topics. Okay? Let's try around. Let's play that. Let's insert that. And let's do a find. And notice that now, lessons, notice that the one that's lesson 1 now has a new field called topics with an array of an embedded object of topics, one single topic, name, topic 1. Make sense? Right. Again, I'm trying to build the object from the outside in. Yes?
How does it work in terms of performance?
You would try to avoid any updates, inserts dynamically from as much as possible. You would try to make this as stateless as possible, read only as much as possible. Have infrequent updates. This is me doing it at the command line, right? So for a human being, this is perfectly fine if it's just me.